Hi folks, we're going to do an example on how to solve a quadratic equation using factoring. So here's an example. If you have been instructed to use factoring, or if you have decided factoring is the best route to use, then you need to get all of your equation on one side of the equal sign, so you can set it equal to 0. I'm going to subtract y from both sides, and then I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. My goal is to keep the coefficient of my squared variable positive. It's not necessary, but I personally prefer it. I think I make less mistakes that way. So honestly, I would do the subtracting and move everything around, and I'd have 0 equals. I would have had this. But, you know, we can just flip the equation around, so I'm going to put the 0 over here. And so now I have a quadratic trinomial, and it's time to factor. I would quick look for GCFs. I don't see any. I would look for perfect square trinomials. 2y squared is not a perfect square, nor is -3, so I know this is not a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to resort to the AC method. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to say, okay, what does AC equal? Note that this means A times C. When you don't write an operator between things, it means there's multiplication. A is 2, C is -3, so AC equals -6. What does my B equal? B is the coefficient of the middle term here, the coefficient of the variable with an exponent of 1, so my B equals -1. So my question is, what two numbers multiply together to give me -6 and add together to give me -1? Even though you may know what it is already and it's already popped into my head, I'm going to go through the process I've been showing you in class. Because it's easy to think up a pair of numbers and then have it be the wrong pair of numbers, and then you find you can't think of any other pairs because your brain is stuck on the one you started with. So I always start with 1 and the number itself, ignoring the sign. And then I think about what the sign says. Since the sign is a negative, since the sign of my AC is a negative, that tells me that one of my factors down here has to be negative. And this here, the sign of my B, tells me which, okay, let me rephrase that. The sign of, if AC is negative, so I know only one of my factors needs to be negative, then the sign of B tells me what the sign of my bigger number is. Since B is negative, I'm going to make the 6 negative. And if I add 1 and -6, I get -5, which is not what I want. So I'm going to take the 1 and I'm going to increment it to 2. And I'm going to say, okay, what do I have to multiply 2 by to get -6? Well, that's a -3. And I'm going to add 2 and -3 together, which gives me -1. And yay, that's what I'm looking for. So now, AC method tells us we're going to use these two numbers right here to replace the middle term of my trinomial here. So I'm at 2y squared, and then instead of writing -y, I'm going to write plus 2y minus 3y, and then I'm just going to keep that -3 equals 0. Notice what I did. I took this coefficient here, which is a -1, and broke this term into two terms using these as our two coefficients. I know I can do that because that's this whole table here is designed to make this work. So now I've got a 4-term polynomial here. I'm going to factor by grouping. So I look at my first two terms, and they have a common factor of 2y, leaving behind y plus 1. And then I'm going to look at my second two terms. Well, I'm going to take this minus right here, and I'm going to write it down, minus. And then I'm going to look at 3y and 3. They have a 3 in common, leaving behind, whoops, oh, just bear with me. I'm going to see if I can figure out how to fix it. I think if I do that, there, look at that, I fixed it. That's exciting. Okay. I apologize for that little technical difficulty there. So I've got, let's fix up that parenthesis there. So I'm factoring out, so notice this negative was just a copy of this, but now I have to consider the fact that I'm factoring out a negative 3. So a negative 3 factored out of negative 3y leaves just a y, and a negative 3 factored out of negative 3 leaves just a 1. Okay? So what does that give me? Well, now I want to look at this, and the thing they have in common is y plus 1. And if I factor out a y plus 1, I'm left here with 2y, and I'm left here with minus 3 equals 0. So now I can use a zero product property, which tells me if you multiply two things together and they multiply to 0, one of them must be 0. So now I can say either y plus 1 equals 0 or 2y minus 3 equals 0. And I'm going to solve them both. I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, and I get y equals negative 1. And over here, I'm going to add 3 to both sides, and I get 2y equals 3. Divide both sides by 2, and y equals 3 halves. And these are my answers. Hopefully that helps. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Otherwise, I will see you in our next class.